Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're going to be doing my January wrap-up, first wrap-up of the year. I managed to get through 9 books total. All of them were decent to pretty good, so that was exciting. I am going to try and keep this short and sweet because I have to film, edit, and upload this all within the span of one day. And yeah, also I have a functioning mic again. I know this isn't necessarily going to make sense because my worst and best of the year have not gone up yet because my mic broke throughout me filming my worst of the year, and I didn't notice until both of those books or videos were filmed, and that kind of took the wind out of my sails on those videos. I'm very annoyed because I don't want to film them again. So I'm not. We're just gonna have to deal with shitty audio for the 2 biggest or most exciting videos of the year. Anyway, and as always, content warnings will be in the description down below. I always forget to mention this. For the first book I picked up for 2022, I'm not quite sure how to review because I'm not a mystery thriller girly. I don't really have, I guess, the terminology or know what is good or what's not in terms of thrillers. They don't always tend to work for me, or they very rarely do, and this book is kind of middling, so take this review with a grain of salt. But it is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Ayamide. This is a young adult mystery thriller focusing on 2 Black students in an all-white private school, and they are facing like threatening text messages that will basically ruin their lives. And they have to band together to try and figure out who's threatening them and stop them. I think in terms of themes, this book is good. It explores the topics of racism and institutional racism and all of that very well, but I think the characters fall flat. Outside of that, I don't think they stand very well on their own. I don't think their development's really great. I think the side characters also needed a lot more development, specifically just with the main male character and how he interacts with his family. They didn't feel like their own characters, and it just, I don't know, kind of bothered me. I did read this incredibly quickly. I think the comp titles in here, I was surprised by, I think, most of the reveals. It's been a while since I've read it now, I don't remember, but I read it quickly. I found it surprising. The plot, it was definitely a page turner. I just don't love thrillers, so it was out of my comfort zone. Wasn't a perfect thing. I gave it 3 stars. I then went and read Wrath by John Gwynne. This is the 4th book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I'm glad to finally have conquered this series because I've basically been talking about it for a whole year of me getting through this series, and I finally completed this. Overall, I think this is incredibly solid finale. There is a lot of payoff. The grand epic scale of the final climactic battle was huge. The scope of it was huge. I think it lasts 150, 200 pages, the final big things that are happening. And I like the payoff of the slow, consistent building. Overall, over the course of the, wow, that was a sentence. That truly was a sentence. The payoff of the consistent building of plot and tension and all of that, I think it's paid off very well. I think John Gwynne does a good job of that. It still was slow to get moving. I was surprised by that because of the way the last book ended. I thought this would be faster going or more events happening throughout the beginning of the book, but that's maybe just me. I think this balances the bittersweet ending very well. There is a lot of death and carnage and things going wrong. I enjoyed it. Overall, I think I'm giving it 4 stars. It did not hit the 5 stars like I was hoping it to be, but I was very happy with the overall conclusion and the overall series. This I think is a solid 4-star series for me. And I did actually cry during one specific moment, not sobbing, but it was it was a good cry over certain things. I'm interested, I think, to read the sister series or the next series, but people don't love that one as much, so I'm a little bit scared. I then went and read on audio The Broken Kingdom by N.K. Jemisin. This is the bind up, and it's the second book in the Inheritance trilogy. These are more companion sequels. They're not direct sequels, although there are overlapping characters, I think, throughout the course of the series, and I really like this. I love the way N.K. Jemisin writes. I love the way that she puts a world together, and specifically in this one, I love how it expands upon the world that we discover in the first one, but really fills in gaps that we didn't have. This one is way less political focused and focuses more on the magic and like what's happening kind of on the ground level of this major city. I thought the events of it were interesting. The plot itself wasn't my absolute favorite thing. I really did like our main character. I liked her resilience and the way she operated throughout this world. I didn't love the relationship that develops in here. I honestly wished it would have stayed platonic for a couple of reasons, especially because it almost doesn't necessarily echo what happens in the first, but there are some similarities, and I just wish it could have stayed platonic. That would have been fine with me. I love her prose. I love the way she describes things and her visuals. I personally struggle with picturing what's going on, but hers, I have a very clear sense of like her settings and stuff, and I love the way she writes. I did give this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do want to finish out the series. Hopefully sometime soon. I put a hold on the audiobook for the final one, which is long. It's like basically half the size of this bind up. My favorite read of the month was kind of a surprise to me, but kind of not. Like I knew I was going to like it. I just didn't realize I would like it as much as I did. That's The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. This is book 2 in the Winter Night. Haha, it's on the cover. Winter Night trilogy, the first being The Bear and the Nightingale. Going into this, I remember very little from the first one, and because of that, I did struggle a little bit at the beginning. Essentially, this follows a young girl named Vasya, who's living in Russia in like, I don't know, 1200s, 1400s, way back in the day. And everyone in her small village is turning to Christianity, and because of that, the old gods are getting forgotten, which is leaving everyone vulnerable to very dangerous beings. But Vasya can see the old gods and still pay them respects to protect them, but because of that, she's kind of cast off and thought of as very odd, very weird. And then a priest comes to town. He's a nut job, and that's the events of the first book. The second one is really good. I love that this expands so much upon the world, and just like even Vasya's worldview, she gets to experience and see so much more. And I loved that. Vasya as a main character is fantastic. I also really am into the vibes of the romance. That's a very, very slow burn. So I'm very excited to finish out the series. I also really like Catherine Arden's writing. I love how she captures the atmosphere and the tone and the frigid freezingness of like Russia. The stakes and the dangers were upped in a very compelling way. I didn't like love our villain or the big bad. I think that was pretty clear what was going on with them, but other than that, I thought this was like a top tier book. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think upon a reread with the whole series, I could up them all to 5 stars, but currently it is a 4.5. And I forgot this next book, so I have to go get it. Damn. The next book I completed via audio is also out of my comfort zone, and one I have like 2 differing minds or thoughts about, and that's Sing Unburied, Sing by Jesmyn Ward. Objectively, I think this book is very well done, very well written. It is set in the deep south of the US in Mississippi, and it follows this young boy who is, I think, just on the cusp of like being a teenager. It basically is a generational tale flipping back and forth between people related to our main young boy here, Jojo. There's not much going on. I'm struggling to describe a plot, and then I think that's my biggest problem with this book, is it's basically an exploration of deep poverty, the causes behind that, like basically how racism and how the system was built and how it still affects people to this day. I think Jesmyn Ward is a fantastic writer. She really manages to explore and display what she's getting at very, very well. I think the writing itself is very good, but this book is very meandering. There's very little plot. I guess what's happening is that Jojo's father is getting out of prison, but he's not very attached to his father, and he is basically rectifying like his father that he knows and all the like other like male figures in his life, and basically deciding kind of how he wants to be a young man. It's also not a linear tale, so occasionally it's a little difficult to tell where you're going, but I did really love Jojo. This young boy is so sweet and so kind and deserves the world. This also deals with a lot of heavy topics, specifically with like drug use and abuse, so just as a warning. I do think the characters overall needed a little bit more fleshing out, but because this is so short and over such a short period of time, I think that is a hard thing to do. Objectively, I would say it's a solid 4-star, really well written thing, but I gave it 3 stars just in terms of enjoyment. This isn't the typical book I love, but I am glad I read it. I then read Saga Volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan. I think I need to do a good old reread from the beginning of this series before I continue on, which is fitting because I don't own any more volumes in this series, because I like this graphic novel series. I just haven't felt super connected to the characters or their plight in a while, and I haven't continued on in the series in a couple of years, so it's hard to remember what's gone on and all the events of that, even though I did read a recap beforehand. So I think I need to go back to the beginning. I thought this volume installment was good. I liked that certain events happened that we've been waiting to happen for a little while. I wrote didn't care for the side plots, even though that's what's bringing some things together. I still do really like the artwork. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely will reread the series before attempting to continue. When though? No idea. I'm happy, very happy to be talking about this book, and that's The Silvered Serpents by Roshni Chokshi. I have read quite a few Roshni Chokshi books over my booktube time, and I don't think I've given a book of hers over 3.5 stars until now. This was a 4-star, but anyway. This is the sequel to The Gilded Wolves, a historical fantasy series. It initially starts off in Paris, where the main male character, Severin, has been denied his inheritance to a magical house. Because of that, he's like hell-bent on revenge and like regaining his inheritance. So he brings together like a ragtag team of a bunch of different people to accomplish those goals. I love her prose. She can craft a really good sentence. The imagery, the description is great. Sometimes it's a little too much or overtakes other parts of the story, which I do have a problem with, but I really like the way she captured like the frozen nature. I think this is also set in Russia, Siberia, kind of. I do enjoy all of the characters and their unique struggles. I appreciate almost the loss of faith a lot of them are having, and them trying to decide if it's worth it to continue, if like their friendship, if all of that is as real as they thought they were, and like the slow seeds of them possibly coming back together. That stuff I did really enjoy, because after the events of the first book, there are some very big events at the end that has destroyed the group. I think I would have enjoyed if they struggled a little bit more in terms of the puzzle solving. That was a really fun element of the Gilded Wolves. They're kind of treasure hunters trying to solve this grand puzzle, and I always love those elements. They're very fun. But this one, like, it was, all the stuff they were solving was so easy, like ridiculously so, and it just makes you question why like this stuff has been missing for so long, you know? I really enjoy both of the romances developing in here. One of them, like top tier, shipping, the vibes are great. If I was a teenager, like I would absolutely be obsessed with them. You could tell exactly where the story was going in terms of plotting. You could tell like who the big bad was with ease, like with shocking ease. I have finally figured out though why I struggle with Roshni Chokshi books at times, because she's great at writing and crafting individual scenes that are like so good, and like the events of them, like be it angsty or whatever, that stuff is so great. But like her transitions between that always kind of fell short. One example I could give is that certain characters end up going missing, and like, you know, something goes wrong, so we flip a perspective, and then someone's trying to find the other person going, where are you, are you here? Because everyone else is missing. And instead of possibly extending that or like ratcheting up more tension, what happened, intrigue, whatever, she immediately will cut to the characters that have gone missing, and so you have the answers, but like the other ones don't. And I just think certain things, even just tweaks in perspective, could really help that and make it overall like stronger in terms of the writing. Yeah, I enjoyed this. I gave this 4 solid stars. I'm very happy I enjoyed this, and I want to continue on with the series, hopefully this or next month, hopefully. I then went and listened to Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluo. This is my first book from her. I know she has the other popular nonfiction, and I'm going to go back and read that one, but this one had a very short wait time at my library, so I just stuck a hold on there. I think this is an excellently constructed nonfiction because it's so rage-inducing. It's so irritating. This is about the legacy of white supremacy in America and how the system was built, like the system works, what's her phrase? Works as designed. And she traces back from history to now and discusses like different aspects of society, specifically in America, and how white supremacy is at the cause of that, and like how mediocre white men are at the helm of it. This is obviously a very intersectional book. I really specifically liked the stuff in regards to the NFL and like its origins, also learning about Buffalo Bill. I had no idea who that figure was in history, and that is just also rage-inducing. I learned a lot about American history, about the Great Migration, whilst also how it leads into very contemporary topics. So I think this is great. I don't rate nonfiction, but this was 2 thumbs up. Also, Jess Owens did a live show. It's a 2-hour live show about the book, and I just finished the discussion, and like I gained even more from that discussion, so I'll leave that linked in the description. The final book I completed in January, I read it because I had like 2 days left, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to finish Rosewater in that time frame because it was taking me quite some time. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to pick up a romance book. I was feeling in a romancy mood anyway, and I wanted to get it completed by January. So I did, and that's The Roommate Risk by Talia Hibbert. I love Talia Hibbert. She just writes excellent romances for me specifically. Basically, Jasmine and Rahul meet at like 20 years old in college, become best friends, and Rahul is very interested in Jasmine, but she doesn't do relationships, and they actually end up sleeping together as youngins, but then decide, nope, I want to remain friends with you, I have to have you in my life, blah blah blah. Cut to present day, 7 years later, when Jasmine has an issue at her apartment where basically it's flooded, so she moves in with Rahul, and they won't fix it for quite a few weeks, and they have to live together, and then sparks fly. I really enjoyed this. I think Talia Hibbert did a great job of selling me on friends to lovers, especially with Rahul, like being in love with her for 7 years throughout their relationship, but not making it weird, not making it creepy. She sold me on it. He was so respectful and great. Rahul has my whole heart. Holy crap. Was he a great hero, great romantic interest. I really enjoyed the sex scenes, the steamy level really worked for me. The one complaint I had was, even though this is short, it felt slightly drawn out, or it just needed a couple more scenes interacting with others to make this feel like a more fully fleshed out story. Like, it's so very centralized. Most of it happens within the apartment, and maybe just more outings interacting with the world. I would have appreciated as a balance to the one big setting and atmosphere that they're in. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I gave this a solid 4 stars. Like it was creeping up to a 5, but there are a couple tweaks I would have made. So those are all the books I read in January. I read from like a little bit of everything, which I am happy with, although I do want to read a lot more fantasy in my future. I am happy with the way that this shook out. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any thoughts on any of the books that I have read. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon with broken audio, but